Hi, my name is Fiona. I'm a counsellor and psychotherapist, and in today's workshop, we're going to look at people pleasing when everyone is happy but you. I suppose people pleasing is a behaviour that we get drawn into without perhaps even realising it, because we want to be kind, we want to be good, we want to help other people, and it can become a very fine balance between helping each other, but then it slips into worrying about what happens if I don't agree to that? What happens if I say no and then I start worrying about it? So, in today's workshop, we're going to look at, are you a people pleaser? Do you understand the effect it has on you? And then looking at different ways where we can perhaps change our behaviours and look at different ways and come up with practical solutions to how we can change our behaviour. So we're going to start now. So first of all, let's look at a little checklist to see, have you moved into people-pleasing mode? So here are a couple of things that you might find yourself doing. Do you have a difficult time saying no to people because perhaps you are worried about what they might think, or you need to be needed and you might be worrying that you're letting other people down? Do you feel guilty when you say no to somebody, and then perhaps you're again going into overthinking mode, that I have to do this, that they will be disappointed in me, and essentially you're trying to second guess what's going on in somebody else's head. Another one, do you agree to do things that you really don't want to do and you can't really find a way to say no, or that doesn't suit me? Maybe you want people to like you and you prioritise their needs over your needs, which can perhaps make you feel frustrated, or you don't have any time to do your own bits and bobs. Or maybe you take the blame when it really had nothing to do with you, but you're the first person to say, oh, I'm sorry, now I should have done that, when really it wasn't your place to do that. Or it might be you pretend to agree with people when you really don't. Or it could be, I suppose, like when we get into people pleasing mode, we don't have time for our own needs. We don't have time to do our own bits and bobs, that we're constantly rushing, or we feel like we're on the back foot all the time. Perhaps you feel under a lot of pressure to squeeze a lot in, and then you don't get to take care of yourself because other people's needs have gone further up the list than your own. Or it might be that you're struggling with low self-esteem and you feel you need to take on other people's stuff to prove something to somebody else. So these would be a couple of the red flags I would look for when I'm working with my clients, when we're doing our psychotherapy, to look at, first of all, identifying behaviours, looking at what is actually going on in your life. Have you slipped into people-pleasing mode to keep the peace around you, but you don't have ultimately peace inside you because you feel perhaps you're getting dragged and drawn into other people's lives and you don't have time to be your authentic self? So there are just a couple of questions to ask yourself to see if you have slipped into people-pleasing mode. So now we're going to look at why we may have slipped into people-pleasing mode. And I said, when I'm working with clients, a lot of the times it can be due to an insecurity inside of us, that we don't have a defined sense of self, that we're unsure of how we present in the world, that we're not confident in who we are as a person, and that we feel the need to do extra things for other people in order to make us feel better about ourselves. And it's always nice to help other people out, and it's a kind thing to do. But if it has gone to the extent that it's to the detriment of our own happiness and our own peace of mind, then it can become problematic. Because another reason why people can slip into people pleasing mode is we are looking for external validation. We need other people perhaps to tell us that we are a good person. We need to be needed, that we're looking for this positive feedback because for some reason we can't give that to ourselves, that we can't validate who we are as a good person, a kind person. And instead of listening to our own internal communications, the things that we think about ourselves, what we tell ourselves on a daily basis, that we look externally for that. And the issue that I'd have with external validation is it can be taken away. We don't have any control over external validation, and yet we can take charge of our own lives and validate ourselves in, you know, how we present in the world, and that we're a good person and a kind person. So that's another way that we can get drawn in. Again, it might be to do with low self-esteem. How do we feel about ourselves? What are we telling ourselves on a daily basis? And to build up our own self-esteem from internally managing our thought processes can help build us up, so we don't need to engage in people-pleasing behaviour to the detriment of our own needs and our own wants and our own happiness. And then lastly, sometimes we can slip into people-pleasing mode based on past experiences. Sometimes perhaps it could be if you've had like a difficult childhood and you were always trying to be the good child, and that has become ingrained inside of you, and then you carry on those behaviours into adulthood, but those behaviours are now perhaps not serving you, and you know at some point it's going to become difficult for you, because it's important that we manage our lives now based on what works for us as adults, so that we can meet our own needs. Because as we get older, it's very important that we can prioritise our own happiness and our own self-esteem through self-care. And self-care is not selfish, and putting our needs first is really important to enable us to take on life's challenges and to handle difficult situations that arise, because our happiness is ultimately up to us to work on. And by taking charge of our behaviours, and earlier on we looked at the list of things that we might be doing completely unaware to ourselves, of having slipped into people-pleasing mode, and looking at why that happened, and also the impact that can have on us without maybe us fully being aware of it. And we're going to look at that now. So we're now going to look at the impact that people-pleasing behaviour can have on ourselves. And a lot of the times clients would say that they just feel angry. they feel angry at themselves because, when you slip into people pleasing mode, it can be exhausting. And perhaps we don't feel respected, that our time is not being respected, our boundaries perhaps aren't as good as they should be. So we can become angry at ourselves, or we can become angry at whoever is taking up all our time, or sometimes we can be angry at both. We can also perhaps feel frustrated with ourselves for not being able to say no, frustrated at our overthinking, or frustrated at the person or people, again, who are draining all of our time, where we cannot prioritize our own needs because we just have no time for ourselves. By the time we help everybody else, we are perhaps exhausted, or we're constantly catching up on our own life admin, lives in general, because there's so many needs being put onto us, and we're being pulled and dragged in lots of different places, and we can find that very challenging. And as I said earlier, sometimes people slip into people pleasing mode due to low self-esteem. They need to be needed, wanting to be part of something. However, ultimately, slipping into people pleasing mode can actually hamper our self-esteem, because perhaps we're not being our true authentic selves, because we're agreeing with people that we probably wouldn't usually agree with, or we're feeling under pressure to take on other people's work, or we feel that well, I've always done this, so I need to continue doing that, and you don't. And we'll come to that in a while. Also, when we are people pleasing mode, we can feel very overwhelmed, and that again comes back to having no boundaries, feeling under pressure. It's like we're not in charge of our own lives, because we have no time, because we're doing everything for other people. And while it started out as a kind thing to do, saying yes, always being available because we think that's the kind thing to do, at some point we have to have boundaries around our lives, and it's okay to say no. And a lot of clients would find that quite challenging, because again, we're going into other people's heads. Well, what will they think if I say no? Or they're going to be very cross with me if I say no, or they're going to be very angry with me, or they're going to be very disappointed. But the thing is, that's other people's stuff, that's not our stuff. And when we start to change and put boundaries in place and take charge of our own lives, we can still be there to support other people and to help other people. Just the difference is we're doing it because we want to do it, not because we feel we have to do it, because we're worrying or overthinking about what other people might think or say about us. It's about getting back into the driving seat of our own lives, so we can essentially just find balance in life. We can be there for people, but in a more manageable way. So we're going to look at that now. So how do we change out of people pleasing mode? The first priority is to work on boundaries and to let go of this limiting self-talk that is negative, and stepping away from worrying or thinking about what other people might be thinking, to prioritize ourselves. And as a psychotherapist, I'm a firm believer in the small little changes that we make, the little baby steps that we build on and that we build on. They are what bring about lasting change, not the grand sweeping gestures, because they put a lot of pressure on us, and in my experience, they don't really work in the long term. It is small, consistent changes that we make on a daily basis that will help us to build boundaries. And this is going to take time, because slipping into people pleasing mode happened most likely over a long period of time. We weren't even aware of our behaviours, and it's only when we can acknowledge the impact that we spoke about, like the anger, the frustration, the feeling overwhelmed, when we can acknowledge that's the situation that we're in right now, then we can acknowledge that and look at ways to change. And the big thing is to build boundaries. So, for example, if you find you're in people-pleasing mode in lots of different aspects of your life, it's going to be very difficult to change everything in the one go. So pick one relationship or one situation, and tackle that one at a time, because it's like building new habits and processing that and managing it. So in terms of building boundaries, the small little changes. Let's say you, maybe in a work scenario, you find you're always the first person to put your hand up, even though you know that you don't really want to do it. Look at that behaviour. Why am I doing that? Am I doing it to keep the peace around me, but I've no peace inside me? Am I doing it perhaps to impress other people? Am I doing it because I want to feel needed? Again, going back to the external validation. So first of all, identify one aspect of your life that you feel that you have slipped into people-pleasing behaviour, and then look at, why am I doing this? And it may be taking out a journal, writing down, why am I doing this? What are the pros and the cons? What am I gaining or losing from behaving in this particular way? And this exercise is done without absolutely any judgment on yourself or feeling under pressure. It's about just openly acknowledging yourself. One situation, why am I doing this? What am I hoping to gain? And more importantly, what am I losing? Because a lot of the time we just lose time. We lose our sense of self because we're not being our authentic selves, and that we struggle with saying no, because again, we're going back into other people's heads. So just pick one situation and identify what is going on in that, and then we're going to look at now some different ways of behaving and how to manage that process. So we're now going to look at different phrases or ways of behaving that we can practice with, as I said, one scenario in our lives to regain back control of our lives and to build new habits that are much greater benefit to us. And I know a lot of clients would feel quite anxious and quite scared about change because they don't maybe want to deal with a possible fallout. But at the end of the day, this is our lives, and we cannot be there for everybody to the detriment to ourselves, because they're all delighted and we feel exhausted or overwhelmed or angry or frustrated. So here are some phrases that you can possibly incorporate, and if necessary even practice in front of the mirror or role play out in your head. Okay, so the next time I'm asked to do something, I'm going to come out with a different answer. Okay, so here's one suggestion. Let me get back to you on that. So if you are always the first person to go, oh, absolutely, yep, I can do that, no problem, you need to learn a stalling technique, not to be the person to jump in and fix somebody else's problem or do their work or step in for them. So it's about learning to stall. So it said, let me get back to you on that. Or if it's something that comes in by text and you're the first person to reply, don't. Leave it a bit longer, and then clients will say, oh no, but they'll be worried now because I'm always the one. Change takes time, but it will be worth it. But it involves us taking charge of our lives. So the stalling is either the phrase or, not being the first person to reply to a text looking for, support where you really can't do it at this moment in time. Or again, it could be by email. Learn the stalling, but if it's face to face, let me get back to you on that. Or another one could be, thank you for thinking of me. It means a lot, but unfortunately I can't make it. And this is just a phrase to practice if you feel that you're constantly being invited to things that you really don't perhaps even want to go, or you don't have time, or it doesn't suit you at this particular moment in time. And it's not about saying no to everything. It's about, does this suit you? Prioritizing your own needs. Does this actually work for you? And if it doesn't, stalling or saying no in a nice way. And also I would say to clients, keep your answers short, because sometimes, particularly at the start when we're learning new behaviours and we kind of maybe don't want to hurt somebody, or we feel that we owe them something, it can be quite difficult for us to practice putting up our healthy boundaries around us. So I would say to clients, no big long answers, no over explaining, because depending on the other person, if we give a very long answer, it can allow the other person to kind of nearly argue against what we are saying. So keeping your answers and your replies short and polite, and even if it's just at the start as you're learning to behave in a different way, even stalling the length of time that you respond, so you feel like you're gaining a bit more control. And at times where you could easily slip back into people-pleasing mode, so don't be hard on yourself. This is about learning to change and learning to prioritize our own needs, and it will take time. But if you pick just one aspect, you will feel the change in yourself. You will feel more in charge of your life, and you will feel happier in the choices that you are making that work for you. So we're now going to look at managing the process, I suppose, essentially dealing with possible negative outcomes from other people, because we no longer want to play the role that we have slipped into, the people-pleasing role. And perhaps people have taken advantage of our good nature and our time, and their assumptions will be that we will always do this role, and that's the way it's going to be because that's what works for them. But I would encourage clients to focus on, it may be working for them, your behaviour, but is it actually working for you anymore? And as I said before, it's not to say that we can't help people and we can't support other people, but healthy relationships involve give and take, whereas people-pleasing mode involves us giving and giving and giving of our time, our energy, our space, our peace of mind. And it's not a realistic way to continue on, because it will have its impact on us, as we spoke about earlier. We will become unhappy with ourselves. We won't be our authentic self. We can become angry and frustrated. But it is possible to change. Will there be a bit of kickback? Yep, most likely, because we don't want to be in the role that we have slipped into because it's not working for us. And that's okay. Because sometimes when we're working on this and we're looking at change, and perhaps you say, do you know what, I'm actually just not around that day. Whereas beforehand you would always have been there, you'd have been there at a drop of a hat. You can expect that other people may not be happy with your decisions. And that's okay, because ultimately that is their stuff. It's not your stuff. And, you know, you kind of have to kind of hold strong for a bit, because it might be that you say, do you know what, I actually can't help out with that today. Leaving it at that, rather than going into a big long explanation that somebody else can argue back, and holding firm. Because if they come back and they say, well, I'm very disappointed, that's their stuff. That's not your stuff. And if you have your own priorities or your own things that you need to do, avoid falling into the trap of feeling guilty. Which I know can be difficult, but this is about making positive changes that will work for you. It doesn't mean that you're never going to be available for other people, but for a period of time, you need to redraw boundaries, and it'll enable you to be there for other people at your own will. Because you're doing this because you want to do it, not because you feel that you have to do it. And it's really important to sort of understand that concept, that I will be there because I want to be there, rather than feeling, oh, I have to do this, because that can just bring up a lot of negative stuff, and it's draining our own time and our own energy when the other person is perfectly happy because they've got lots of support. But we have to prioritize ourselves at times. And there may be a little bit of fallout, there may be a little bit of kickback, but by prioritizing your own needs, that's a good thing for us. That's a helpful thing that will increase our self-esteem, and it will lower our stress and anxiety levels. So just to manage the process, that you don't start feeling guilty, or if you do, reminding yourself, I'm doing this to make my relationship with this person on, more even, or that I can, do that extra work without feeling resentful because I didn't stand up for myself. So just managing that process and having a clear idea of why you're doing this, because you've just picked one aspect of your life and to work on. And the more you do that, and the more you practice it, and the more you hold firm, polite but firm, short answers, no over explaining, you can then carry that into other aspects of your life, and it will definitely make you feel better about yourself. So we're just coming to the end of today's workshop, looking at people pleasing. And it's something that we can all drift into at certain times in our lives, and it can be very slow and subtle, and it's only when I think it brings out the anger, the frustration, the feeling overwhelmed, are we actually sometimes even aware that we are doing it. And so don't feel, that, oh, it's only just me. Everybody can slip into this mode, and it's just bad habits. And we might do it to get external validation or increase our self-esteem, but it actually has the opposite effect. It's not going to help us, manage our self esteem or how we feel about ourselves, because ultimately, at the end of the day, people pleasing is about prioritizing other people's lives and needs and wants over our own. And it's about building boundaries, and it's going to take time and practice. I said sometimes I have my clients practice in front of the mirror, even just getting the words out of your mouth. And there will possibly be a bit of kickback, or a bit of people maybe being surprised that you're not there at their beck and call, and that's okay. A lot of the times it's just about getting a better balance in your life that works for you. It's not about never being there for anybody or taking it to the other extreme. It's about creating a situation that you feel happy in, and that you can prioritize yourself. It is not selfish, it is self-care. And it's ultimately a good thing to do for ourselves, so that rather than wanting to keep the peace all around us, that we have peace inside of us, and that we're happy with our decisions. So I hope you found today's workshop helpful, and take care.